So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview with the Shield Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and tonight we have Sanhedrin, and we have this is a band from New York, a trio that plays classic heavy metal style with hard rock, and we have Jeremy, who's the guitar player and backing vocals for the band, joining me here, and we're here to talk about their album that's coming out on March 14 called Heat Lightning. So first of all, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing good. So yes, listen to the album. Quite enjoyed it. So this is an album that's a first for you guys because the last four albums you were working like in the same producers, and for this one you decided to make a change
Yeah.
and go with a different route, different producer, different studio. Uh, what made you guys want to make like that change for this record in particular?
Um, we just felt like with the last engineer, Colin, who we love very much, he's a good friend of us. We just felt like we had taken his studio and his approach to its limit in terms of how it could push our band's sound further in a studio setting. And so we were discussing different people to maybe go to or different studios to use while we were writing the album. And then, sort of organically, a friend of Nate, or two friends of Nate, our drummer, are recording engineers, and one of them wound up with the sort of in at this really legendary studio up in Woodstock, New York, where tons of platinum records have been recorded since like the 70s. It's
Utopia Verseville, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it all just sort of happened one thing at a time. And the two guys that we were talking to were super excited. They're friends of ours. And Colin's studio was great, but a lot of the gear was sort of piecemeal together. There was no console, there was no thing like that. And the thing about Bearsville is it has that classic mixing desk, the console desk, where all the instruments are running through the same circuitry, and that gives sort of a glue to the sound that we never had before. And yeah, it really just was a matter of one thing leading to another, and us sneaking through the back door of this really famous studio in a way that we could afford. And having two engineers was helpful because we could record multiple people doing their jobs at the same time in separate rooms. So it was really efficient. It was a lot of fun. And I think most importantly, we kind of got what we were looking for sonically. We wanted this record to have a more in-your-face, aggressive punch to it, whereas the older records were a bit warmer, a bit more, you know, everything was clear and the separation was all very good, but it was a little this record just kind of punches harder, and I feel like the material that we were working with this record needed that more so than previous records as well.
Okay. I'm just curious, like which famous bands work in that studio?
uh REM, Dave Matthews Band, Meatloaf, Rush, and Justice for All was mixed at this particular studio. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You could probably ask.
Well, at least
Um,
you know the
like
band.
like the Pretenders worked there. Like it's this one of my favorite Social Distortion records was recorded there. And I feel like when you're in a place like that as a musician, you sort of absorb the ghosts that are in the walls and apply it to your own performance, you know?
Yeah, well, the record sounds fake, menacing, but also you bring that like classic heavy metal sound that I know a couple of bands are doing it right now, but it's a sound that it's not as prevalent as it used to be. Like how do you feel like playing that sound, bringing that into the masses now in 2025?
Well, really, we just play the music that the three of us create when we get in a room. So when we started the band, this sort of traditional heavy metal stuff was not necessarily, there weren't as many bands doing it 10 years ago as there seem to be now. And it wasn't like we said, I want to start a traditional hard rock heavy metal band. It was just kind of like, this
That's
is
like.
sound. Yeah, this is the sum of our influences and how we influence each other and how we feed off each other. This is the result.
Okay. So when it's time to pick a single, because you have the video and the single for Blind Wolf,
Yeah.
how do you go about that? Because that's a cool song. Also, it starts the record.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's interesting because I like to think that any song on any album we make, we approach it as though it's its own single.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not like writing songs and saying, "Oh, this should be the single, this should be the single," while we're working on it. We get the whole collection, and then we go through. We picked some songs we thought would be good. We have a lot of trust in our A&R rep at Metal Blade. He's become a good friend of the band, and we know that he has our interests at heart. And so we had some ideas, he had some ideas, and at the end of the day, we sort of discussed which ones. I felt as soon as Blind Wolf was written that that should be the first single and the first song on the record because I just feel like if you've never heard the band before, it's a good representation of who we are as a whole. And it's also a good, on that same line, it's a good way to sort of set up what the listener's going to be going through for the next 40 or so minutes with the remaining 8 songs after. It kind of drags you in. It's super catchy. It's like, okay, by the time that song's done, maybe it leaves you wanting a little more. And then the next song, Heat Lightning is different. And then, every song is kind of its own thing, but it makes you go, I wonder what they do next. That's my goal anyway.
Yeah, with Blind Wolf, I like the chorus part because it sounds like more like it's like a mystical song, and the
Yeah.
music video you're all three like sitting like in a chair. It looks like you're chanting, so it gives it that cool like heavy metal vibe to it that I really like. But there's some songs that I really, there's a lot of songs that I enjoyed the record, but I liked a lot the song Above the Law because
Okay.
that one with the choruses, it sounded a little bit like a thrash metal type of song.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, the band's been around for about 10 years, and so has the music for that song.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been it was a little different originally. It had this big convoluted intro and outro back in the day. Um, but when we were putting together songs for the record and hearing how different songs were materializing with one another, it was suggested to kind of break that one out into the fold. But yeah, I think it's an homage musically to our punk rock and crossover and thrash sort of passion that all three of us have in the band. Because we're a heavy metal band, but again, we're really just taking all of our influences from everything we love as individuals and giving them to one another and throwing it in a cauldron and mixing it up, and this is what you get.
Yeah, so well, it's funny because it's like when did you decide? Oh, we have this old song, let's bring it back.
Uh, we were probably halfway through writing songs, so we probably had 4 or 5 songs, and then I was like, "Hey guys, remember this one?" Because we hadn't played it in years, and I don't even think we ever played it live. And I think Erica didn't really care for the lyrics she had written at the time, many years ago about it. And so the chorus had that big above the law gang vocal in
Yeah,
it the whole time, but she reworked the lyrics to be a bit more about, modern concerns and things that she's thinking about now versus, lyrics she wrote 10 years ago that maybe aren't as relevant now. And one of the things that we like to do is have songs that are in different keys, songs with different tempos. And, that song was unique to anything we had written so far. So I suggested, hey, let's bring this out of the vault and see if it's something we can retool to fit on the record. And that's how it started. And then Erica reworked the lyrics, and here we are. That was actually one of the songs suggested to be a single, but we chose Franklin County Line instead of that one for single number 2, which is coming out soon. Spoiler alert.
Oh, well, yeah, well, depends on when this drops, but yeah, yeah, that's a cool one too, and a fun track. And also, I love the ending track, which is like the longest track on the record, almost 8 minutes. When the wheel becomes the chain.
Yeah.
Uh, that one again has like I like a lot of like the choruses on that one. I don't know why it reminded me of like power metal meets glam metal. It was like a combination of different things. So tell me a little bit about that one.
Yeah, that one started with that main opening riff, the which to my mind is kind of like something, John Christ from Danzig or Gene Simmons would have written for Kiss, like just sort of that big sort of war drum heavy, big guitar riff. Um, and it was just something that again, we didn't really have anything else on the record that was that sort of mid-tempo plotting thing. And then I wanted something where the chorus was just going to be a caveman heavy thing, and we all worked together on that to get that heavy. And then it kind of twists at the end and becomes this different song, which is a device I've always wanted to use. Something that like Black Sabbath would do a lot, where, you know, you start with like War Pigs and then you end with this crazy solo section that just turns into, it's like you left that song and you're starting a new one, but it's all one song. I always like,
Yeah.
uh, and there's a Golden Earring record that Nate and I have listened to together a lot called Moontan, where they do that a few times, where it's like super catchy song. And then, after the second or third chorus, they just go off into La La Land and jam out. So yeah, that
Well,
was kind of an ode to like some 70s hard rock records in a lot of ways.
yeah, no, this record is like an ode to a lot of like I think I hear a lot of like different eras of metal represented on Heat
Yeah.
Light. And so the band, so you think the band in sound wise on this recording, it's evolved in that this record sounds like you said, like meaner than your last records.
Yeah, I don't know if songwriting wise it's always that way, because you have like the title track has almost like an uplifting, power pop vibe at times. But we wanted clarity. We wanted, like, for me as a guitar player, the guitar tones I got on this record, particularly the main rhythm guitar tone, is something I've been striving for years, and it's like the closest I've ever gotten to what I've heard in my brain as like what I want the guitar to sound like. And that kind of clarity that I got allows more room for the drums and the bass to sit well in the mix as well. And then the drums just smack a little harder with with quite a bit more punch. And feel like Erica's singing on this record is her best performance she's ever done. And she's been wowing us in the studio since we made the first record together. Our jaws have been dropping. So the fact that she, 4 records in can still, you know, just improve is awesome. So yeah, I just felt like the clarity. I feel like the engineers we used this time had a really good idea of what we were trying to accomplish. They were friends. They were just as passionate about the album as we, the band, were, and that comes across.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm wondering, like, what gear do you usually like to use, to get that guitar tone that you love?
In the studio, I used, well, I made we made a demo of the whole record first. So Nate recorded drums in our rehearsal space, and then I recorded everything else at my house. One of the things I did was I took a verse and a chorus of every song and I recorded them all with 4 different guitars going through my main guitar amp, and then
Mhm.
see which 2 guitars blended the best for that song. So every song has its own, left and right combination of, this Les Paul and that Les Paul, or this Jackson and that Les Paul, or whatever. Um, and then at the studio, I used 2 different guitar amps going through 3 different speaker cabinets, and then we just sort of blended the tones to get one big monstrous guitar sound out of it. I mean, I could go really in the weeds with details about it. But that's the gist of it. Just a lot of pre-production thought before we get into the studio and we're on the clock.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. How long was the recording process for this record?
The first time we went to do drums, bass, and guitar, it was about 5 days of 10 to 12 hours a day. Just work, work, work. And I was sick as a dog, which made it kind of extra fun.
Yeah,
Um, and then we came back a couple weeks after for 2 or 3 days to work on vocals and to do what's called reamping with the bass tracks, because Erica recorded her bass direct and then we ran it through 3 different amps at the same time later and mic'd them all up how we wanted, and each song has a different blend of which of the 3 amps we're using and what percentages based on what the song needs. So we
mm,
went all out.
good thing you were prepared. So when you go to the studio, you're not wasting anyone.
Exactly.
So let me show the artwork for the record, so we can talk
Yeah,
about work, which is a pretty cool artwork. Uh, Give me one sec. Here it is.
here we
The
are.
Here's the artwork for the upcoming album.
Yep.
I mean, so tell me a little bit about this album artwork.
Well, it was painted by a friend of ours named Johan Pranger. He's based out of Netherlands, and we played in 2019. He was a friend of mine prior through relationships with my old band Black Anvil, and I had him come to the show to check us out. Mostly, I just wanted to see him and say hi and hang out. And
Mm-hmm.
he saw the band, and he was like, "I love this band," and I would tell you if I didn't. He's that kind of guy. And in the meantime, he started up doing all these cool paintings, and I actually have 4 of his paintings hanging throughout my house. And so when it came time to do an album cover concept, just like we used a different recording engineer, we used a different cover artist this time. The first 3 records were the same person. This time we wanted a different vibe. So he and Erica got together with all the lyrics of the records and tried to tie the lyrical themes into the cover of the album that you see.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool album. It looks very metal. Uh,
Yeah.
there's purple in it, and it has that vibe. I think yeah, it goes well with the music in the record. So yeah, pretty cool album artwork. I dug it. So I know that Erica, because you do some backing vocals, do you help with like with the lyrics in some capacity?
Um, I would say mostly no. I did write the second verse of The Fight of Your Life. And then in the studio, while she was recording vocals, I sort of acted as a quasi producer when it came. There would be some lines that maybe the syllables weren't lining up rhythmically as tight as they could. So I would help her maybe rework a couple words here and there to make it fit and snap a little better. But Erica is the predominant lyricist. She's probably written 95% or more of the lyrics.
Awesome. So the albums are March the 14th out of Metal Blade Records. I'll
Yep.
post a link for people who want to pre-order the record. So once the album is out, do you have like a album release show? Any shows booked already?
Well, not a formal album release show, but we're going to be playing Hell's Heroes in Houston, Texas on March 20th, which we're very excited about. On March 30th, we're going to be playing the 2 Minutes to Tulsa Afterfest party on March 30th, and that's a free show. So if you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, come out. And then we will be playing Lady Beast's album release party April 26th in Pittsburgh, because they did play our album release party for the last record. And so we're returning the favor. They're good friends of ours. And then in May and June, we celebrate the album by heading to Europe for a couple weeks with our very good friends, Savage Master.
Seems like you have it all planned. It's gonna be
Yeah.
a busy year. So Jeremy, I'm not gonna take any more of your time. I know you're busy. You have more of this to do. But before I let you go, anything that you like to say to the fans before we go?
Just a big, fat, beautiful hug and thank you to everybody who's supported us through the years and taken interest in our band. Like just because you write songs with your friends doesn't mean you're entitled to have anybody else like it. And we've been very surprised and grateful that we've been as well received as we are, and hopefully we get some new fans to come along for the ride with this new record. And we welcome everybody.
Awesome. So yeah, Couchers, Sanhedrin-Heat Lightning out March 14. Again, Jeremy, thank you for joining me from New York here to Puerto Rico to chat about the record and metal. So until next time, Couchers, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.